ॐ शङ्करं शङ्कराचार्यं केशवं बादरायणं सूत्रभाष्यकृतौ वन्दे भगवन्तौ पुनः पुनः। ईश्वरो गुरुरात्मेति मूर्तिभेदविभागिने व्योमवद्व्याप्तदेहाय दक्षिणामूर्तये नमः। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्ति। Last Wednesday we started the study of Bhagwan Badarayana Vyasa's Shariraka Mimamsa Shastra with Shankaracharya's commentary. Though the announcement and the English translation calls it Brahma Sutra Bhashyam of Sri Shankaracharya, I explained to you that the original name given by Vyasa himself is Shariraka Mimamsa Shastra. And we explained the background of this book, that Veda, Ved means to know, Vedas means knowledge, but all so-called knowledge is not included in the Vedas, that perceptible to the five senses and by logic built it upon them, that is the realm of physical sciences or ordinary worldly knowledge. Apart from this, there is a knowledge of the subtler realities, the chief being the knowledge of gods, devatas, or angels as the Christians call it, which is associated with the cosmic aspect of some physical matter or energy. Fire. There is fire in my kitchen, your kitchen, in everybody's kitchen, in forest, in our stomach, in the ocean. All fire is seen as one with the consciousness playing with it. So it is called Agni Devata. In a similar way, Jala Devata, Forest Devata, Tree Devata, the king of Devatas, and so on and so forth. This is the first part of knowledge, which is called the Vedas. And the name for this is Sangita, because when we come across a divinity, we are full of praise for it, and we praise it. That is called the collection of these hymns for different gods is called Sangita, and that is the first portion of the Vedas. Then the second portion, which is called Brahmanas, contains the laws between our work done or thoughts thought of and the result thereof in the next life. So this karma and karma phala knowledge is also not perceptible to the eyes, but it is a sure knowledge seen by the seers, which are called rishis. And so this type of subtler knowledge is also a part of the Vedas, and the name of that portion of the Vedas is called Brahman. Then the third type is that man becomes disgusted with this gross ordinary world. And so he retires into the forest and he perceives the subtler entities, like the example I give you, like the electron or proton, that the tanmatras, that much only, that is something which can be seen, something which can be tested, etc. So this subtler matter is perceived, and then beyond that is the mind, which is also perceived. Behind that, what is there? Behind that, what is there? Like that, the subtler perceptions also, especially in the Aranyaka portion, this is the third part of the Vedas, and this is the Vedic knowledge. Now, the Vedic knowledge, due to our ingrained selfishness, we are converting into the Brahmana portion or Vinyoga, use of this knowledge in order to pray to gods to give us something. And then in the business, the rules of giving and taking hold good, and that is why we do not proceed. But if the mind is little purer, less of selfishness, then this devotion to gods raises the level of our consciousness. And when the level of the consciousness is raised, what we see that different cosmic consciousnesses are not actually different. There are different phases of the same one consciousness throughout the world. And when we become aware of the one consciousness throughout the world, then the knowledge of the Vedas reaches its culmination. That is called Vedanta. And here we also saw that when such a jump comes in the mind, two corollaries, two effects follow immediately. One is that my consciousness is not separate from that. When I am aware of a cosmic entity like the Agni Devata, I remain a separate consciousness associated with this individual body-mind complex. But when I perceive one consciousness throughout the world, then this I consciousness also is not separate, one corollary. Secondly, there is nothing called matter in the universe. That means the one consciousness appears through infinite names and forms, that is the world. And because we are not aware of the consciousness, we are aware only of the names and forms. And that is what we call matter or energy or anything. So actually, there is no physical matter or energy in existence. The one consciousness through names and forms. Form is ever changing, it is not real. Name is only an empty sound. So that does not affect the consciousness, but the appearance is there of millions or innumerable or infinite varieties. And that infinite varieties we perceive without being able to perceive the consciousness, and that is what we call dull matter. So these two conclusions come: there is no matter, there is no I, separate from the one consciousness without a second. This culmination of the Vedic knowledge is called Vedanta. Now, this Vedanta is contained basically in Upanishads. Upanishads, the meaning of the word Upanishads, the original meaning of the word Upanishad was secret knowledge. Definitely secret does not mean like secret society. Secret knowledge means hidden knowledge, means subtler knowledge. That was the original meaning. But then from the same word, we get the entire real meaning of the word is that Upanishad. That means Sat is that knowledge. Sat is a verb here, not Sachidananda Sat. Sat is a verb here having three meanings: destruction, achievement, and loosening. And when it is appended by Upa and Ni, Upa means near, Ni means Nishchaya and Nishtha, the firmness of conviction and the steadfastness in that knowledge. So when we approach that knowledge going near it, rather bringing the knowledge near us, by assimilating, by experiencing ourselves that knowledge with a firm conviction of its real nature and a total steadfastness till we reach the goal, then that knowledge destroys our ignorance or wrong knowledge, which we have today, and it achieves Brahman for us. We get Brahman there. And also, all our bondages, which are due to this imperfection or wrong knowledge, are loosened. That means we become free. So the meaning of the word Upanishad is that knowledge which releases us if we approach it properly. Now, we get it? We get it in the as a portion of the Vedas, I told you. So the portion of the Vedas gives this knowledge. Both it is available, sometimes in the Sangita portion, sometimes in the Brahmana, sometimes in the Aranyaka. It is not a separate part of the Vedas, but in every Veda and in every part, this knowledge comes. Suddenly we face with this knowledge, and that is the Vedantic knowledge or the Vedanta. So Vedanta and the Upanishads terms are interchangeable. Now, other than this Upanishad, there are two more standard works dealing with this very knowledge. These Upanishads are the original Vedanta is called Shruti Prasthan, revelations helping us to realize our own real nature. The other is Bhagavad Gita contained in the great Mahabharata. I was going to say epic, but I changed myself. The Westerners call it epic. It is history, itihas. Because it is itihasa, it is taken as smriti, not the original revelation. Because description comes there, a lot of description comes there of the physical events happened once upon a time. So because it is contained in that Mahabharata, generally all scriptures other than the original Shrutis are called Smritis. Though there are several divisions, Smriti, Purana, Tantra, yet the generic name for all the scriptures other than Shrutis is Smriti. And because this is contained in that Smriti called Mahabharata, the Bhagavad Gita, though it has the equal authority with the Upanishads, the Swamiji called the divine commentary on the Upanishads is called Smriti Prasthan. That scripture helping us to reach our goal of life, but which is contained in this Smriti. And the third is this, which we are going to study, and that is called Nyaya Prasthan. Because this, we explained on the last time that the confusion remains in the mind of many people, ancient and modern, due to the title Vyasa. But three Vyasas at least are known to philosophic history. The Krishna Dvaipayana Vyasa, called the Veda Vyasa, who divided the Vedas into four parts so that they can be remembered by his disciples. That is, and he composed the Mahabharata also. So that is called the Veda Vyasa. He was born in an island and his name was Krishna. So Krishna Dvaipayana Vyasa, he belongs to hoary antiquity. Rough estimate today is that 3000 years BC. Then we get this Vyasa. The meaning of the word Vyasa explained last time, like the diameter of a circle, knowing knowledge from this end to that end, we give it a title to that person, he is Vyasa. Though in the modern times, Vyasa is also a speaker who explains the scriptures, but or it has become a family title name, but the original meaning of the Vyasa is a person who knows knowledge from this end to this end. So this, and he lived in the Badri Dham or the Badri forest. So his name is Badarayana. Actual name becomes unknown. We know by his abode. Because he lived there, it's called Badarayana. And because he had knowledge from this end to this end, he is called Vyasa. This Badarayana Vyasa thought that if a person has to study all the Upanishads together in a systematic way, what sentence he should study first, then what sentence, then what sentence, so that a cohesive meaning enters his mind. With that motive, he composed this Shariraka Mimamsa Shastra. We have a body, anything related to body is called Sharirika, but there is something inside the body, and that is called Shariraka. And what is that reality which is inside the body? Mimamsa means the analysis. So the analytical knowledge of the reality inside the body was on the basis of Upanishadic scriptures is what is the attempt of Badarayana Vyasa And so we call it Brahma Sutras, we call it Vyasa Sutras, we call it Vedanta Sutras, we call it Uttaramimansa. And so this is the scripture we are going to study. And so the name, popular name is Brahma Sutras. And in this Brahma Sutras, there are 4 chapters, each chapter having 4 sections, and the total number of sutra means aphorism. The total number of aphorisms is 555. But the first 4 sutras, if studied with the help of Shankar's commentary, give us the entire picture of our spiritual life. All the other sutras will tell us, according to Upanishads, what is this, what is that, what is sadhana, what is upasana, and everything of the world seen from the view of Upanishads. That is the description of the 555 sutras. And it has been arranged topic-wise and systematic, logical in a way, and so it is called the Nyaya Prasthana. The logical scripture, though Vyasa has not done a separate logic, but he has logically or a common sense view of all the scriptures, Upanishadic scriptures together. That is called the Nyaya Prasthana. And that Nyaya Prasthana, first 4 sutras, along with Shankar's commentary, we are going to study. Now, because they are sutras, a big commentary is necessary. About the sutras, they say, about the Vyakarana sutras at least, that even if half a syllable could be reduced, they were as happy as if a son is born to them. So it becomes very terse and so liable to hundreds of interpretations which do exist. In India, the ancient system was, if you want to propound a philosophy, write a commentary on the Brahma Sutras and you have your own school of philosophy. So the meaning, original meaning gets lost. And the tradition, whether we believe it or not, says that Vyasadeva himself met Shankaracharya and told that you please write a commentary on my Upanishad, my Sharirika Mimamsa Shastra, so that the average man can understand what is the import of it. So that led to his writing, and this is the scripture in our hand. Now, original scripture, aphoristic, commented by Shankaracharya, is in Sanskrit. Now, Sanskrit has become an ancient language for us, though never a dead language. And so, we require translation. Now, when we try to translate it, then I told you the other fact that Shankaracharya preached or taught this highest knowledge by roaming throughout India, but especially in Bengal, where Tantra was prevalent. He showed the absolute reality of this Vedic knowledge. But the Tantrikas took it in a different light, that because his logic is very sharp, so he has defeated us. And so in order to make their logic sharp, they started a new branch of logic called the Navya. And the reality is to be experienced, not logically understood. So in the presentation of the language, they could find some parts, logical parts. And so they wrote a book of criticism, Shatadushani, on some text of Vedanta. The Vedantis thought that this will mislead people. So they criticized every word of that book and wrote a book, Khandana Khandakadya. And from then onwards, they started writing books with full carefulness that the logicians could not criticize any word of it. So the language became logic instead of experience. Original Vedanta is experience, but the logic of all the books later than 14th century AD, with one exception, All the books after the 14th century AD written on Vedanta are full of that Navya terminology. And that takes Vedanta away from experience. And that is the problem which people find, that to study Brahma Sutra is very difficult, they say. I told you about one exception. And that book we studied, Vedanta Sar of Sadananda Yati. He has cut himself free from this Navana language, and in a direct language has told us what the Vedanta is for. Apart from that, all the books are filled up with that Navana language. And so, an attempt was made in Hindi to write in non-technical terms. And in English, we have the great translation of Swami, Revered Swami Gambhiranandaji, along with copious notes. But those notes also sometimes deal with the technical matters. Now, so with this background, today we want to start the actual study of this Chatusutri. Now, in this text which you people have, because the link was provided by the university, Sanskrit has also been written with breaking the sandhis and samasas. So that becomes easier to read and to understand what is the original word. Now let me read the first sentence and try to explain. This Yushmat Asmat Pratyaya Gocharayoho Vishaya Vishayinoho Tama Prakashavat Viruddha Swabhavayoho Itaretara Bhava Anupapattau Siddhayam Tad Dharmanam Api Sutaram Itaretara Bhava Anupapatti iti Ata Asmat Pratyaya Gochare Vishayini Chidatmake Yushmat Pratyaya Gocharasya Vishayasya Tad Dharmanam Cha Adhyasa Tad Viparena Vishayena Tad Dharmanam Cha Vishaya Adhyasa Mithya iti bhavitum yuktam. There is the one sentence. Now, in the traditional books, other than Gambhiranji, it is called the Purva Paksha. But we do not require a Purva Paksha here. This is something which Shankar himself is making very clear to begin with. What is that? Now, to read this first clause, Yushmat Asmat Pratyaya Gocharayoho. Vishay Vishayinoho. This is mixed, combined, two clauses have been combined. Those who know Sanskrit little, Yushmat Pratyaya Gocharasya Vishayasya and Asmat Pratyaya Gocharasya Vishayina. These two clauses have been combined according to the idiomatic Sanskrit language. So let us try to understand now. Yushmat Pratyaya Gochar. Let me tell you in the very beginning what is all about. Then it will be easy to understand. There is something, as I explained to you, matter, object of perception, of enjoyment. That is called Vishaya. And there is a separate, to begin with, there is a separate thing called consciousness, which is called the subject. Now, the object is called you, Yushman. Why Shankar has used the word you? Generally, the object is called idam, or this. This or that is the object. Shankar has deliberately used the word you instead of this or that, because he wants to show the total opposition from the subject. He wants to show, no, this or that is different from I. but you is totally opposite to I. And so instead of idam or I am, he has used the word yushmat. You understand? This is the first point. Yushmat means when we utter the word you, pratyaya, an experience comes in our mind. Pratyaya means the experience which comes in our mind. When we utter the word you, that is object. When we utter the word you, a something comes in our mind, which is the object. And when we utter the word I, some experience comes in me, and that is the consciousness. That is the subject. So, you experience object, matter maybe or energy. I experience subject, consciousness. This is the meaning of the first clause. Yushmat asmat pratyay gocharayo vishay vishayno. Shashti of this tama prakashavat viruddha svabhavayo. They are as opposite in nature to each other as darkness and light. As opposite as darkness and light. Because dull, dead matter and energy have no light. Consciousness is all the light. So, I giving rise to the feeling of consciousness, which is called I or the subject, and you giving rise to the feeling of matter or object are totally opposed to each other like darkness and light. Viruddha svabhavayo. The very nature of them is totally contradictory to each other. Then itara bhava anupapattavu. Bhava means nature. Bhava means the positive existence. Bhava means the original nature of a thing. Now itara bhava means I becoming you and you becoming I. Itara bhava anupapattavu means illogical. There is no logic in the world which can show that consciousness can become matter or matter can, it is not energy. Huh? Energy becomes matter, matter becomes energy, both are physical. But consciousness is a non-physical entity. Consciousness is the absolute reality. Consciousness is the very nature of real existence. So, this consciousness and matter are absolutely opposite to each other. So, how can consciousness become matter? How can matter become consciousness? Itara bhava anupapatto siddhaya. Siddhaya means it is an established fact. No logic is needed to tell us that it will be illogical to hold that I will become you and you will become I. I and you, remember, are not two persons here, not at all. You designates matter. Instead of this or that, Shankara has used you, especially because he wants to show the contrast, opposite nature. So, I and you, please don't. Some people confuse I and you, both are conscious. No, no. You means matter. He has explained it, clarified it by calling it Vishaya, object. The difference instead of say matter and consciousness, we can also say object and the subject. The object perceived and the perceiver. So, how can the perceiver, this will be easier to understand. How can the perceiver be the perceived object? How can the perceived object become the perceiver? I think now it is very clear. Instead of I and you, we use the inner content. How can the perceiver become the perceived object? How can the perceived object become perceiver? It is absolutely illogical. that is self-established. Tad dharmanam api. Dharma means the characteristics. If I am the subject, then there are some characteristics. And the main characteristic is consciousness only. But consciousness is immortal, can never be destroyed, is non-physical. So the consciousness has its own characteristics. While anything, object, physical, matter is always destructible, continuously changing, limited, because it is perceived by our senses, so it is measured by our senses, measurable. Consciousness is immeasurable. So the characteristics of consciousness and the dharmanamapi sutaram itara bhava anupapatti iti. Sutaram is totally, absolutely, without any doubt. The characteristics of consciousness or subject can never become the characteristics of the object or matter or energy. Atha, therefore, asmat pratyay gochare vishayini chidatmake. Here he has made it clear, it is of the nature of consciousness. Chidatmaka means nature of the nature of consciousness. Vishayini, subject. Asmat pratyay gochare. That which comes to our mind when we utter the word I, the pratyaya, the experience contains what it perceives. What is the content of this? Vishayini, the subject which is consciousness. And the other side is Yushmat pratyaya gocharasya vishayasya. When we utter the word you, the pratyaya, the perception, it is perceived as an object. The dharmanamcha and its characteristics can never become the characteristics of I. Adhyasa. It is the main word in this sentence. And this introductory commentary is held in very high regard throughout the world of philosophy. It is separately studied as Adhyasa Bhashya. Now the literal meaning of Adhyasa is superimposition. Now what is this superimposition? Shankara has explained. But from the word itself, let me tell you, with an example better, there is a row. In semi-darkness, I see that something exists, but I see a snake. Now we can say that a snake has covered the row. Not actually, not actually. In my consciousness about the row, my consciousness about the row has been covered by my consciousness about the snake. This is called superimposition. Superimposition means in my consciousness, my awareness, something has come upon something. Come upon something means that original thing is not seen. No, it is not there in my consciousness at all. That is called superimposition. In my consciousness, if in place of something I see something else, that means something else has in my consciousness been superimposed upon the reality. That is called adhyasa. Now, because the subject and object are opposite to each other, the characteristics of subject cannot be superimposed upon the object. The characteristics of the object can never be superimposed upon the characteristics of the subject. This should be very clear in the mind. Adhyasa tad viparena vishayena tad dharmanam cha vishaya adhyasa of the object on the subject mithya iti bhavitum yuktam. If such a superimposition takes place, we shall say it is unreal, it is false, it is illogical. It cannot happen. It is impossible, illogical, cannot happen because we have seen that they are totally opposite to each other. This we must hold in mind. The illogicality of I becoming you or you becoming I, or the characteristics of I becoming the characteristics of you, the characteristics of you becoming the characteristics of I. Please remember here, there are not two persons. Otherwise, in love, so much superimposition takes place. Not that. Consciousness or the subject, the characteristics of consciousness and the subject can never be superimposed upon the characteristics of the object. And the characteristics of the object can never be superimposed upon the characteristics of the subject. So if somebody feels there is a superimposition, it should be unreal. It should not be real. It cannot be real. It cannot be logically held. It cannot be real. Iti bhavitum yuktam. That is what we expect. That is what is expected. That the superimposition of A on B and B on A, the characteristics of A and on the characteristics of B, and the characteristics of B on the characteristics of A cannot be held to be real or logical. That is what is expected. Bhavitum yuktam. Yuktam means logical. That is logical. That it is unreal. Such a superimposition is false, unreal, cannot happen. Tathapi. And yet, what is our life today? What is our life today? Tathapi, even then, anyasmin, anya atmakatam, anya dharmancha atyasya, itara avivekena, atyanta viktayo dharma dharmino mithya jnana nimitta, satya anrute mithuni krutya, ahamidam mama idam iti, naisargiko ayam loka vyavahara. Though it cannot happen logically, though such a happening is impossible or false or unreal, yet what is our behavior? What is our natural behavior? Naisargiko ayam loka vyavahara. Loka means all the people in the world, people in general, humanity in general. Vyavahara means their behavior. Naisargiko, natural. I am this. What is the natural behavior? This body is matter. And I call it I. I call this body as I. Or at the most, my body. We may say my body, but actually, when the body is hurt, I am hurt. So I body. And otherwise, anything connected with my body is mine. My friend, that means associated with my mind. My father, my mother, my child, completely associated with the body. So how it becomes mine? Though it is impossible, and yet it is most natural today. That is what Shankaracharya is showing. That impossible, illogical, false, unreal, and yet the behavior, natural behavior of people in general is that I body, my body, people related to this body are my people. What is happening? Satya Anrute Mithuni Krutya. Satya means existence, and this matter and all that are continuously changing. They are unreal, but these two are getting mixed up. Mithuni Krutya means coupled, joined. Who is joining this? In my consciousness, it is joined. I cannot say I am joining. Huh? It is joined in my consciousness. Mithya jnana nimitta. Definitely this must be due to false knowledge. It is due to false knowledge that the reality and unreality are coupled. What is false knowledge? Dharma dharmino atyanta viktayoho. Though they are totally separate, consciousness and matter are totally separate, as already been shown. Characteristics of consciousness and characteristics of matter is absolutely separate, as has already been shown. Itara avivekena. But we do not see them separate. We do not see them separate. Atyanta vivektayo. Though by themselves they are separate. By themselves, consciousness and matter are absolutely separate. But we do not see them as separate. So what is happening? We are superimposing the characteristics of the object on the characteristics of the subject. We are superimposing the object on the subject, and we are superimposing the subject on the object. We are superimposing the characteristics of the subject on the characteristics of the object. That is what is happening. Tathapi. So, Swami Vivekananda has beautifully dealt with this in his 3 chapters on Maya in the book of Jnana Yoga. He said this is a statement of fact. Now please understand. Truth is the truth. Fact, you must complete the sentence fact of our experience. Truth is the nature of the thing. And fact is fact of my experience. So what is the fact of my experience? I have mixed up reality into unreality. And that Swamiji has shown in our life. And this is Maya and this is Maya. So Swamiji's thing is an experiential commentary on this particular statement of Shankaracharya. Shankaracharya is called natural fact of experience. And Swamiji has given scores of examples of this natural fact of experience, which is already a contrasting things combined together. Impossible things being felt together. So, this is the first sentence or first 2 sentences. We are clear now? When we say you, object, when we say I, subject, these two are contrary to each other like darkness and light. So one becoming the other and the other becoming this is impossible. It is an established fact that they are impossible. And the characteristics of this becoming characteristics of that, characteristics of that becoming that of this is equally impossible. Because this is of the nature of consciousness, it is the subject, and that is an object, not consciousness, it is a perceived object. And so the characteristics, mutual characteristics, if we say it is superimposed, it is a wrong statement, illogical statement, impossible statement, theoretically. Mithya iti bhavitum yuktaha. That means logically it is impossible. And yet, in our common behavior, in our natural behavior, we see something different has happened. We see that the reality and unreality are coupled up. It is a wrong knowledge. And because of that, the whole world calls this body as I or mine, and everything related to the body or even the mind is called mine. And so, such a peculiar state has happened that is called adhyasa. That is called superimposition. So, Shankar will step by step make us understand the nature of this superimposition. But in the first sentence, the statement has been made that our life is illogical. Our life is self-contradictory. The very basis of our life is self-contradictory. It is illogical. Nothing is logical in our life. And we shout about logic, logic, logic. But the life itself, it is a statement of fact that our life is illogical. Our life consists of contradictory things being mixed up with each other. Let me take one or two examples from Swami Vivekananda. He says, the mother loves the child as her own. The child may turn out to be a black car. He may beat the mother, and still mother loves him. And people praise that it is the unselfish love. But what is the fact? She cannot give it up. She is bound to that. She is attached because she feels it is her. Though there is nothing called her there. No couple, no parents have produced a child. The child is a consciousness flow. You have given him the body at the most. Body is neither you. And so, but basing upon contradiction, the mother feels it is mine, and though that child beats her, she cannot give it up, and we call it unselfish love. Where is love in that? Where is unselfishness in that? It is only the morbid attachment of molecule to molecule and being called mine. The other example Swamiji is given is just now that logic is based upon perceptions only. And if there is a reality, if there is a consciousness, it is not perceived by the five senses. And so how there can be a logic about it? How there can be a logic about consciousness when it is not perceived? Logic is based upon perception, but that is the fact of life. We want logic of everything. We want to understand everything by our intellect. Though our intellect is made of time, space, and causation. So when we try to perceive something, we throw this network of time, space, and causation, and that we call real. And yet we die. More and more research we want to do, basing upon our intellect, which is limited by its own nature, but we cannot give it up. That is called the statement of fact, Maya. So, two examples I have given, the mother-child relation and the limits of intellect are not known. And we struggle. My Guruji, suddenly I remembered his word. Remember, beautiful sentence. Huh? The highest intelligence is that which understands the limitations of intelligence. The highest intelligence is that which understands the limitations of intelligence. Not my intelligence or your intelligence. The human intelligence is limited. And this we do not understand. So to understand it is the highest intelligence. And then a man gives up this attempt. Not that he turns to blind faith, not at all. That is equally pitfall. Man takes the help of reason, intellect, so long as it can help us. And then when reason or logic points out that the reality is beyond, one goes through strict discipline to experience that truth. So big gap between experience and logic. No logic can, I remember something in olden days. I was invited in our Culture Institute to give a lecture on Vedanta. And the presiding officer was a professor of logic. And he said in the end that the lecturer was emotional at times. I remember his sentence. And emotion, however good it may be, cannot substitute for solid reason. And no, I had no occasion because he was the president. He concluded like that. But revered Prabhananji asked me to make an article out of it. So I got a chance and I've written that. We have heard like this, but reason, however solid it may appear, can never replace experience. Reason, however solid it may appear, can never replace intelligence, experience. And amongst the reason and feeling, emotion is a different thing, mind you. This is again Maya. These days, the word emotion has become so current. My Guru used to shudder to hear the word emotion. He used to say emotion is biological. In the depth of heart, in the depth of absolutely tranquil heart, there is a feeling. And that feeling is nearer to experience than the reason. And so, it may appear that the feeling is working, but it will take us to that experience. Well, reason can never. And so, people understand Vedanta very nicely through the reason, and no change in life comes. So, Vedanta, Swami Vivekananda has said, bhava, that means this feeling, and knowledge. Two streams were running parallel. Swamiji's words I am quoting. Two streams were running parallel. And when they met each other, we got the Vedas and Vedanta. We got the Vedas or Vedanta when the stream of feeling and knowledge met together, then we got the Vedas and Vedanta. So, reason, however solid it may appear, logic, however solid it may appear, can never replace the experience. And there is what is difficulty come, as I told you in the beginning, this Navya. Now Shankar's presentation is highly rational. Nobody can criticize that by reason. But he himself says, following Vyasa, Tarka Pratisthana, logic has no base. Logic has no base. If you say that I will go deeper, the other party will say I will go still deeper, and there will be no end, because logic has no place. It will be difficult for most of us to understand, because that is Maya. Because our mind is built up, especially in the modern days, to follow logic. Why? We are caught in that Maya of logic. Though really analyzing, we understand that logic is most insufficient tool. And yet we are trapped in that logic. And so the emotion and cannot replace solid reason. The solid reason appears solid. Where is the solidity of reason? If those who are interested, I recommend them to read Bertrand Russell's Mathematica, Principia Mathematica, and his treatment of formal logic. Logic is only a form of life. Form of presentation. Logic is contained only in the syllogism, he says. Only in the steps we show the logic is there. Otherwise, there is no logic. And so, the two examples are given. The hold of logic on our mind, though we really understand that the experience is very different, transcendental, and the mother's love for the child. Though the world may praise as unselfish love, it is a morbid attachment of molecules to molecule. She is bound by that. And so, this is the statement of fact. And that Shankar is telling here. When we go through the experiences, we understand better. So, that is what he says that Swabhavik. Now, one more point. It is most natural but wrong. It is wrong but natural. This one must understand. It is mithya and yet natural. It is natural yet mithya. The meaning is that we cannot blame any person because it is natural. But we cannot justify it because it is wrong, it is false. So one has to cut the Gordian knot and go above, go beyond, transcend it. That is the lesson of this throat, Adhyas Bhashya, that we must come out of it and follow our pure experience as taught by the rishis, as taught by the Shariraka Mimamsa, and reach that goal. Om Shankaram Shankaracharyam Keshavam Badarayanam Sutra Bhashya Krito Vande Bhagavanto Punah Punah Ishvaro Gururatmeti Murti Bheda Vivagine Vyomavad Vyapta Dehaya Dakshina Murtaye Namaha. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Tat Sat. Shri Ramakrishna Arpanam.